There we go. I couldn't work out how to unmute myself at the same time as showing my screen. Let's try that again. Right, so I'm Jake Bashford. I work for the Real Farming Trust. You'll probably only have heard of us if you know the Oxford Real Farming Conference, which is our conference. We're interested in agroecology and social justice, so we're quite a weird organisation that spans everything from food banks to compost heaps. And we're interested in systems change. So we don't normally get involved in sort of long-term delivery work. We try and make an intervention that changes something. So as well as the conference, we have a revolving loan scheme, which organisations like yours can apply for, which comes with business planning and help to develop your work. We are involved in comms about agroecology. We really think that's what changes things. We do some policy work, went on down to Westminster a bit, banging our head against the wall. We've got like little bruises on there because we do that work. And so on. So we've got a range of work. So the work I do is all on social justice. So we did a really big piece of work on ready meals to address food poverty, working with partners that we wouldn't normally work with, quite challenging to us. So we partnered a homeless organisation, disability organisation, as well as some other projects that we were more in line with, national organisations, and they weren't used to working with each other either. And we did a big piece of work on ready meals because people were eating terrible takeaways. So rather than trying to say to them, you ought to be growing your own veg, wasn't realistic for people in those situations. We thought, well, let's do better ready meals. So it was a really big piece of work. And what people valued most out of that, we always have a sort of evaluation and research attached to it to work out what needs to happen next. What does it mean? There was very interesting challenges for us and for the other partners in working together, really helpful. And also what the participants told us was what they valued most about all that work, even if they came in quite extreme food poverty, was the social welcome that they had and the support and meeting new people and finding new social worlds. So we really took note of that we're very interested, because we're interested in food sovereignty and bottom-up stuff, we really wanted to hear what they were saying about what mattered. The other thing was the sort of limitations of the sort of standard work on diversity and inclusion. So it's all good work, but it didn't touch the sides for some of the people we were working with. So at the same time as we were, doing the classic thing of trying to get a black person on our board, which is a good thing to do, that was completely irrelevant for the people we were working with. It wasn't going to change their lives, and they had nothing to do with our work. And we were sort of hearing a lot of, and we were doing it ourselves for good reason, really. How do we get more different kinds of people to come to us and do our thing? How do we get more people, different kinds of people to come to our conference? But I kind of felt like that was the wrong message. We should have been asking ourselves, how do we use our resources to engage with the needs that people on the ground identify as important for themselves? So we wanted to take a different approach to the kind of inclusion work we were doing. Not how do they tick our boxes, but how do we get out there? And it's quite a difficult journey to make. Nearly as hard from here to there as it was. Like, it was pretty hard from there to here. How do we get someone who uses food bank to come to the conference? Or why would he even do that? So we were interested in sort of taking a much more deeper approach to inclusion, really, than we had done before. We felt like we were failing a bit, really. So that's how it came about. So I'm going to tell you what twinning is. It's definitely the most boring part of the session. Don't give up. The other ones are more interesting. I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes to tell you what twinning is, and then we'll hear from 3 CSAs who've had a go at it, about what it's actually like and what it's meant on the ground. That's more interesting. We'll share these slides, I think, Talia, afterwards. So if anyone needs my contact details, it's there, look. Oh, and I have to tell you, it was funded by the National Lottery Community Fund, who've been fantastic funders. They really understand community development. They're really great. So the Real Farming Trust is a national organisation, and we put in a national bid and set up the whole structure of twinning. And then we invited the 8 twins to take part. So 3 of those are on the call. There were 3 CSAs. Altogether, there's 8 people who do the kind of jobs that you're going to hear from, each working in their own communities. So the Real Farming Trust gave the money out to those organisations to employ their own people on whatever terms they thought best. And they employed in some cases, people who would never have applied for the job at the Real Farming Trust. So Suad, for example, is a Muslim woman in the middle of Bristol. She'd never have even heard of the Farming Trust, Real Farming Trust. So she gets a bit of money to do the twinning work in her community, employed by her own organisation, and then they report to us on the work. So that structure was good. So I'm going to go on to the next slide now. Oh dear, can't work out to go on to the next slide. How do I do that? There we go. We'll share these two links. They're definitely the most boring slides. Don't despair. It's going to cheer up after this. There's even photos after this. So this is what, for us, for the Royal Farming Trust, the purpose of twinning is. So you'll notice there's nothing on there about people are going to eat agroecological food, because that's our objective. The objectives are all social. And we wanted these objectives to touch the participants on the ground, people who came to a CSA or a food bank or whatever it was. But they were also objectives for organisations like ours, because there are sort of chasms between the Trussell Trust, who deal with food banks, for example, and the CSA network, who deal with organisations like yours. We worked across the board, and those chasms between areas of practice were really stark and obstructive, we thought, to the kind of work that we thought needed to happen. So we wanted to make these social connections at sort of all the different levels of work. So you'll see we wanted people to talk to people they wouldn't normally speak to, that they would broaden their practice as a result, that they would do things that mattered to people on the ground. So it wasn't us trying to impose our marvellous ideas because we had control of funding, that people would articulate what mattered for themselves, that people's horizons would widen. So, we noticed particularly with marginalised groups, people's social and geographic worlds were really tiny and really closed. And they couldn't change anything about food or anything else in their lives beyond what was inside that bubble. Then, of course, we realised that we all have those kind of bubbles that are quite hard to talk across, including people working in the food sector, all of us really. So we thought, we noticed that for yourself, you can't pop that bubble, that there has to be an intervention that causes you to cross that bubble. So I was talking to someone here, for example, who had all kinds of ideas about Muslims and feminism and what mosques are doing in cities and all the rest of it. And I said, you ever spoken to a Muslim? No. It didn't have any means of having that conversation. So we wanted to make an intervention that allowed people to get out of their bubbles for social reasons. We expected that some experimentation would take place as a result. And of course, as a Real Farming Trust, we were interested in sharing the learning. This is why we're doing webinars like this, of the consequences. So these are the purpose of twinning. It doesn't mention food. Of course, we're really thrilled when people do interesting and new stuff around food that is in line with what the RFT wants to see. And miraculously, all of the twins have done really interesting stuff about food, and often things we would never have thought of and shouldn't have thought of, but actually because it's fitted with what mattered in their spaces, they've done really interesting and great stuff, and we're happy about that. So it has actually worked even to meet our objectives, to have these social purposes. So the next slide's even more boring. I'm sorry. This is, I promise you, the last boring slide in the whole webinar. And I'm going to tell you about the principles of twinning. So what twinning is really from our point of view. So I've got to faff around on my screens to open the right slide here. And get back here. Hang on, just faffing around. There we are. If I can select. There we are. Here we go. So we'll share this with you. Don't feel you need to try and read this. I'm going to talk you through it. I just wanted to flag that this document exists, and you can use it. I'm thinking that probably for most CSAs, it's actually impossible to do twinning because, it's reliant on grant funding and grant funding that's come from outside. However, I think some things we've learned and the principles of twinning are definitely applicable to whatever kind of inclusion work you're trying to do. So I will talk you through what we mean by twinning and the structure of it. So we've started with twins that were really separate from each other. And it's quite hard. It's quite hard for you to even, without a third party, making those introductions to find that third party. And you've got to be quite brave to do it. It's quite hard for you for an organisation like ours to work with the CSA network. It's pretty tricky for us to work with a homeless organisation. So start with someone who's really separate at a worker level as well as at a community level is a feature of twinning. And then we've got both partners are equal in the work. So we haven't got a beneficiary organisation. It's not that the food bank are the ones being helped, and their partner is the one doing the helping, because those objectives that I showed you before, they apply to everybody involved. Both of the partners have got equal funding and both have got equal responsibility. So there isn't, and that immediately gets over a lot of the issues around dignity and poverty and all that kind of stuff. So both partners had equal responsibility and shared outputs that they had to deliver. So they were forced really to work out how to work together, and they didn't always find that easy. It was a big ask, but the fact that they had shared responsibility and shared finances to do stuff meant that straight away they were thrown together. So yeah, they've done really well. It was a big ask, very difficult thing to have for them to have to do. I've said already that as the sort of national organisation, the overseeing organisation, it's been helpful for us that they recruited their own staff and we just gave them money to do that. Maybe to a small extent that helped their capacity, and we're to be very happy about that if it's happened. It's also actually made life easier for us. We're not trying to build an empire. We don't want to manage loads of staff and do all the HR and all the rest of it. So that structure's been good for us, and hopefully good in some cases for the twins as well. And they did work we couldn't possibly have done with their own staff. They were really good at working in their own communities. So from our point of view, it's tricky to work with those tiny little grassroots organisations who don't work the same way as a big voluntary sector organisation. And some big voluntary sector organisations don't understand that. And those little grassroots organisations are much better at doing stuff than we can. They're much worse at filling in spreadsheets and managing budgets and all that stuff. So we took some liability and effort in that, really, to work with little organisations. It was a good idea, but you've got to understand how to do it and how they work, and don't expect them to do the same thing as Sustain would and so on. It was really necessary and helpful to set some objectives, that they can't just spend the money on buying a new tractor to make the farm work better, that some degree of structure was necessary, and it was actually necessary to have a third party to say, this is what you should be doing, why haven't you sent us a report, have you done any events, did they include people on both sides? So to have the level of objectives that we did have, and a third party to say, have you done that, was necessary. Otherwise, I think it would have just got lost. Yeah, keep admin to a minimum with small organisations. I've said already about giving the power of money as low down as possible was really helpful. And they did stuff much better than we could have as a national organisation. I think it's been really important to have quite low-key targets, that the organisations themselves are completely overwhelmed dealing with the day-to-day. So to really keep the work possible on the terms of those organisations. You know, if the food bank don't want to do anything for 3 months because it's Christmas and they're overwhelmed with packing Christmas boxes, it's quite right that we're not challenging them to change what they do and keep twinning as a sort of quite small add-on to what they're doing, that twinning shouldn't have been overwhelming their organisation. It's just a small add-on. And so, yeah, to keep it not too demanding has been good, I think. And the other thing to value things like the real work was not glamorous or big. It was just someone sharing a fag together and having a good chat. That was where it was at. So to begin with, I think some of the CSAs, well, and the other organisations were putting a lot of effort into putting on quite a spectacular event, and maybe not many people would come. And that was not really where the effort was needed. The real skill that they've done so well was in making people feel welcome and making a safe space, even though it doesn't look fantastic and fabulous. Just making a tea space or small things were really where it was at. Yeah, accept some risk. We were doing something with people we didn't know. The other organisations were doing things with people they didn't know and couldn't predict. So, you know, if they didn't meet their targets, we just wanted to know why, what was happening, what was interesting. And that was necessary, and we had to have a funder who was up for that. Oh, now this one's quite important, number 12, and probably really relevant to you if you're trying to do this work, is to understand and allow for the injuries that poverty causes. So more than once we heard from people in quite different settings that the biggest barrier actually was between the sofa and the front door, that people who had difficult lives, who sometimes really quite overwhelmed by their situation. They'd had a lot of negative experiences. They were exhausted. Maybe they had mental health problems. The demands on the day to day were really extreme. And though actually once they got out to the event, they had a great time. It's worth putting a lot of resource into that hand holding and support and making people feel confidence and giving them flexibility on the day to actually get themselves there. That people put on community events, and who comes to those is not the whole community, and there's a reason for that. So they've done a very nice job, the twins, in understanding and making relationships with people on the ground who don't get out very easily. And that was part of why we've got so much divisiveness, so much separation. It's really easy if you never leave the front door to pick up all kinds of racist ideas online. So that business of helping people step out is where really they've done a good job of putting the work in. And it's expensive, it's hard to do, and it's skilled. Yeah, if you just put a sign outside your CSA saying free food or welcome, probably you won't get the right people there. There's a lot of work to sort of behind the scenes in people, sometimes right to people's homes or in places where they already go to help extend where they feel safe to go. Yeah, think about what you're evaluating and why. Whose opinions are you valuing? What matters? Do you evaluate against the objectives you set yourself whilst holding the grant? Or do you ask people on the ground what mattered? What was difficult? What was interesting? It's been really important that it's very long term, that in the first year, it was a struggle to get anything going. By the fourth year, in fact, we had underspend, quite significant underspend. Even though people could spend the money on employing staff to do the work, we still had underspend. In the fourth year, people have asked to do things that we haven't got enough money to pay for. Find that the ideas have got bigger and developed, the confidence has grown, people understand how to work together. So what we should have done, I think, was something much more tapered, because we ended up just carrying forward budget each year because people started so slowly. And now it'd be nice if we had more money and longer. 4 years actually wasn't long enough, as it's turned out. Yeah, and that finally, it's been really important to fully fund the work on the ground. If we want to do evaluation, we want people to participate in evaluation, we want them to do the admin, we must never bleed these small organisations to do additional work. All that work must be paid for. So we haven't always succeeded, I think, in meeting all of those objectives. It's been difficult for the twins. They've done hard work. They've been really fantastic, really brilliant. And maybe I'll stop there, having said what twinning is, and we'll hand over to the CSAs to tell us what the reality's been. It's not always quite the same as what we thought up in the office, and some of it's been really hard. They've done a great job. So, is that all right, Tolly? Should we hand over to the CSAs? We haven't agreed an order, and they're going to tell us about what it's actually been like to try and do this stuff. So I think maybe just choose your order. If someone wants to go first, just go and introduce yourselves.
Happy to go first. I can I present? I've just got 3 slides, and then Jade, you said you might have some photos, so maybe after I finish those 3 slides, you could put some photos on. Okay, cool. Uh right, I hope this works. So if we do,
Yeah.
you can see that, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Go to view slideshow and then we'll get it bigger, I think. That's it.
Yeah. Does that
Yeah,
look good?
yeah.
Right. Yeah, so Stroud Community Agriculture, that's our half of the twin. Set up in 2003, I want to think, one of the first SCAs, CSAs in the country. Got a membership of like, oh, actually, I can't remember the number of members, but yeah, serving like the Stroud area.
I know the answer because I went to a meeting last night. You've got 175 household shares.
Oh, lovely. 175, there you go. On a lovely bit of land overlooking Stroud, tenanted off a kind of large retreat centre. And yeah, there's the growing of the food element, but there has always been, I think, a culture of kind of community events around Stroud Community Agriculture. Um, so it's and there's been, bonfire night events, harvest festival events. There's an event in an in bulk event. There's a event that will be coming up soon or has been previously coming out to watch the cows get back into the field. So we have had an animal element to the farm. The demography of the actual membership, difficult to say, but obviously the veg boxes are more expensive than going to Aldi. So uh probably does membership probably does fit into that more middle class category. Um so so yeah, but with regards to the kind of events infrastructure, that's been really nice to squeeze fit in around twinning. Like that's not an alien concept to this farm, to this agriculture project. So you can see in that image even the roundhouse, also an event space on the farm. So it's quite a mixed space. And I've been in the role for about a year and a bit now. There's been a couple of other people in the role since the role started. Our twin is Somali Kitchen, so they're Bristol based, about 30 miles away, about an hour's drive. Um, they are a charity, I think a CIC, supporting Somali background and other migrant background women, helping them do all sorts, connect with food, um, helping them through the asylum process. They are a community space, a family space. It's often women and the children who are interested in what we do at the farm and who we engage with primarily. There is basically never men actually associated with these families that come, adult men, I should say. Um, but yeah, they're centered around food, but they do a lot more than just food. And maybe Eva can say a bit more about Somali Kitchen and their ethos. Our events, I mean, so what have we done since coming in? I mean, there's been events at the farm, and it's really, I suppose, my learning from this is that it's really easy to get the communities from Bristol onto the farm to our events, and often what they're interested in is just getting a bit of fresh air and relaxing in a beautiful rural setting, and they don't ask for much more than that. And we often have had at the farm workshops that a local person is offering a skill. Actually, recently they came and went to the farm. We had a few workshops simultaneously, and Smiley Kitchen also offered a spice making session. So the events at the farm, very easy to get Smiley Kitchen to come because of them. It's a day out, and that's a really good opportunity for Stroud kids and Stroud families and Smiley Kitchen families to mix. And it's a really engaging place when we have those events at the farm. We've also had events on neutral spaces. So that bottom right picture was actually at Cae Tan, CSA around this time last year. We did a kind of mixed field trip out to see another twinning partner. And Pascal's on this course, so cool. So you hear from her. Again, a smaller group when it's, certain events we have a large number of attendees coming. In fact, sometimes we have two busloads of women and kids coming to Stroud for our events. But we've also had smaller events where it's maybe 8 or 9 women from Smiley Kitchen and the same similar amount from Stroud. And then that photo there is of a greening Eastern workshop. So Eastern is the part of Bristol where they're based, and we took a group of Stroudies over to basically help kind of some of the areas where Smiley Kitchen affiliate people are living are quite grey, not very green tower blocks or residential blocks. So it was a day where we took lots of plantings and helped to basically try and greenify and beautify that area. a bit more. Yeah, inclusion wise, I'd say it's been hard to what we're working on this year. And I'm sorry, I'm running over a bit, but I'll just say this and then I'll pass on. It's been a bit hard to get people, Stroud is generally, like I said, our demography is white middle class, and it's been hard to get people who are maybe more working class or less typically CSA is affiliated to benefit from the project. And we're trying to get some events this year that maybe target a bit more or try and make it a bit more inclusive in that way. Going to a youth club to try and strum up getting some local younger Stroud people involved in a field trip that would get them going to the beach with our Bristol kids associated with the Somali Kitchen project. So we're trying to widen the audience who we're appealing to. Eva, pass on to you.
Thanks, Matteo. That was great. How much longer shall I talk for, just so I know how much to go into? We've got 10 minutes in total. Is anyone timekeeping?
Yeah, it was about I was about 6.5 minutes.
Great. Yeah, so unfortunately I don't have any photos, but yeah, Jade, if you could share some as I speak, that would be really great. They might not line up exactly to what I'm talking about, but it'll give you an idea of, yeah, some of the events and what they look like. So yeah, I've only been in this role for since last summer. I actually took over for Matteo while he was away. And then when he came back, I just wanted to stay. So we've been doing it together. And yeah, it's worked quite well because I live over in Bristol, which is where the Somali Kitchen is based. But I was working as a grower on the farm. So I was quite linked up with both Stroud Community Agriculture, working there day to day, and then living in Bristol. So having kind of closer links possible with the Somali Kitchen group. And yeah, one of the things that made possible as one of the twinning aspects of twinning that we did last year was getting some veg over from the farm to the Somali Kitchen group in Bristol. And yeah, I'm really chuffed with that piece of work, actually, because yeah, as Matteo explained really well, Somali Kitchen is a group of women in Bristol, largely Somali women, who are running the charity, and they're set up to support other Somali women in Bristol or women from other migrant backgrounds. So there's some like Yemeni women and Sudanese women, and yeah, what they do as an organization is largely based around food and healthy lifestyles, as well as kind of supporting women in other ways to like access services, education, and that kind of thing. But yeah, there is a food theme. They do a lot of kind of cooking together. They have breakfast clubs. They do like a Sunday meal together where they're like cooking together. It's kind of like a workshop. So it worked really well to be able to provide them with veg from the farm for those activities. And yeah, as you can imagine, living in a city in Bristol in quite poverty-stricken areas, these families don't really usually have access to healthy organic food. So that was a really nice way to link up the farm and what we do at SCA with what the women at the Somali Kitchen do, and the food. So yeah, tackling sort of food poverty there, which was really nice. So yeah, the Twinning Project funded 2 veg shares, 2 large boxes per week, which I would drop from the farm over to Bristol to Suad, who is the twinning coordinator in Bristol. And yeah, some of the other things I've been involved with have been, we did a trip last summer to Degmo, which is a Somali cultural experience farm in Wales. Um, and this was a really interesting twinning event, actually. So it was requested by the Somali Kitchen group in Bristol. None of us on the Stroud side had ever heard of Degmo, this farm. And yeah, it's essentially a Somali cultural experience farm, which is designed for the Somali diaspora here in the UK to, one, get out of the sort of urban centres and cities that they usually live in and get out to the countryside to a farm, and two, to learn about traditional Somali culture, really, about like the sort of nomadic rural culture from Somalia, because a lot of the people living here now are quite alienated from that. And yeah, they either move to this country from cities or they're based more in cities in Somalia. Um, so yeah, that was a really great trip. There was actually about 60 Somali women and children that came on that, so it was a huge event. They weren't all from Bristol, actually. Some of them were Somali women from London who are linked up to the Somali Kitchen group. And then there was about 8 of us from Stroud, so it was sort of quite an uneven dynamic of Stroud people and Somali people, but it was a really beautiful event, and I'm gutted that I haven't got pictures to show you. But yeah, it was a really good example of cultural exchange. So I think the Stroud people really enjoyed sort of learning a bit more about traditional Somali culture, and um, the Somali women also really enjoyed that, because I think for a lot of them it was a huge learning experience, looking a lot at the history of nomadic culture in rural Somalia, and a lot of them who, yeah, hadn't actually lived that. They just kind of remembered stories from their grandparents' generation. And for the children that came along, it was amazing because they were just kind of running free and wild on this farm. And yeah, there were activities like goat milking, sheep shearing. We went out on a night walk, and then we walked up a really big hill as well. So all of these things were quite novel, I think, for a lot of the families that came from Bristol. And it was just, yeah, a really good opportunity to get them out onto a farm. And yeah, as Matteo said, that feels like it's the main sort of desire from the Somali Kitchen group. They're always really keen to come to events on the farm, and we've held quite a lot of events at SCA, as Matteo said, like doing workshops, so like weaving workshops, or they come over for our harvest party. Um, and yeah, they all just love bringing their family out to the farm and roaming around, and you can just see like how happy the kids are to be out there playing. So that's always really nice. But yeah, we've been trying to also balance it out, holding some events in Bristol as well, because from the twinning side, I think it's good to show that that the group from the rural side have come over and visited the urban side as well. So yeah, we've got some plans, more plans this year to do some more greening Eastern events. So the event that Matteo did, building the raised beds outside the flats in Bristol and planting them up with herbs and vegetables for the Somali women to continue to tend to. And we already did a Somali cooking workshop, which was in Bristol, where the Stroud people came over, and we learned how to make a Somali dish. Um, so yeah, I think those were the main things I wanted to talk about. But yeah, just in general, it's been really great to have the funding from twinning, and yeah, also the extra time and capacity from the coordinators, because I think from both sides, like working on a farm, it's really hard to find time to organize these events because it is quite a lot of work. And yeah, I think it has been really helpful to have me and Matteo as kind of separate people coming and giving our time and energy. And from the Somali Kitchen side, I know that the funding from Twinning has been, yeah, just really great to be able to allow them to hire minibuses and get out. And yeah, so overall in my experience, it's been, yeah, a really great way of getting people from Bristol out to the countryside. I think I'll leave it there. I'm not sure how long I've been talking for.
That's great. Thanks, Eva. Matteo or Pascal, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I'm happy to go next. So I'm going to before I start showing you some pictures, I'm going to say a little bit about Cae Tan because the pictures are very much about the twinning. So I haven't got any nice introductory images about actually our farm and on Gower. But so I'll just tell you very briefly. We've been going about 10 years. We are supplying 130 members with weekly boxes. We've done a lot of educational work with schools. We've had trainees over the years. Many of them have gone on to, in fact, Eva was one of them. I've gone on to either work in other CSA or set up their own initiatives. We've always tried to sort of engage disadvantaged groups from town, whether through the colleges or the different social teams. But twinning or working with ethnic diverse people had never occurred, and but in fact we want we all kind of had talked about it and wanted to. So when the Real Farming Trust approached us, it was really welcomed. And I took on the role to facilitate that. And the first years were actually, like Jade was saying, it was actually quite difficult to get people out to our sites, and we put on really we prepared for lovely family days where people could come and just join in to what we were doing, or and we found on probably two occasions, at the very last minute, people cancelled, people didn't come, and it was very much, I suppose, due to like Jade was saying, people's life being very complicated, not difficult, and the prospect of sort of going to a place where you have no concept or no idea where you're going. You might be expected to do some work, and it's raining and it's wells, so that kind of didn't really it didn't start very well in that respect. But we turned it round when we thought, well, instead of trying to get people to come and join into our volunteering days, maybe if we invite them to come and cook together and eat together, and we could cook recipes from their cultures, then it might be more appealing. And that was a great success. I mean, but before we could get there, we had to actually put in place the infrastructure on our sites for an actual kitchen, really, an outdoor kitchen, because all we had up until then was very sort of basic for our volunteers. People would bring their packed lunches, or we just had a small kettle or a fire pit, and it was just, so we needed something a little bit more sheltered and organized. So, and this is when I'm going to share my screen. I hope this is going to work. So let me just do share first. Which way do I do this? Hang on, let me let me do share, and then I do share, and then I do this. Does this work?
Yep, that looks good.
So this was, we've got two different fields, and so you can see our barn there, one of our packing barn, and we built this sort of little structure, lean-on structure, as a sort of outdoor kitchen. That was with the twinning money, and we did that quite cheaply, but it was amazing to have the budget to be able to do that. And you can see the inside there. So it's really basic, but we've got a sink, we've got our sort of two gas burner that we always had, and all our little sort of crockery and stuff that we can keep organized, and a table in the middle. And that just and then we welcomed, in that case, people came, and they really that really worked. So this picture you can see is like the heart of winter. It was actually really cold winter days when we had our first sort of harvesting. People went round and harvested veg, and then we just sort of one of them was in charge of the recipe, and we cooked. So you can see here we had a little outdoor fire pit, and that lady there in the white was you know coaching us all. But there was a lot of talking and hanging out, and just sharing, talking about food, and that was a really lovely medium it kind of brought conversation together. What's your food in your country, and what do how do you find what you need here, or so we had great discussion in that respect, and great day. And then we did that several times, so that's people chopping together in our little unit. You can see there we had actually boarded up at the back. There's not window at the back because the wind was so icy cold from the north. We were so cold, so we had to put, like, me and Tom had to nail some boards to sort of stop that wind driving in. And that's another day. I think by then we'd had windows putting, like perspex windows. And you can see the two different. So the ads there on the left is from Iran, and the two girls, um, where I can't remember the countries, but ads is actually, I'll tell you more about him, because one of the issues that we found over the 2 years is, and I'll talk a little bit more about it after, was just consistency. The fact that those populations are so transient and so changing that it was really difficult to actually establish relationships. That you when from one event to the next it would be a different crowd, and so it felt sometimes just sad not to see people again. But ads, we I'll tell you about him later. So this is a day when we did a photo voice event that was part of the twinning evaluation that was required from the Real Farming Trust, where it was a tool that a researcher from where was it? He was from Oxford or Cambridge, and he wanted us to sort of it was allowing people to find a voice about their experience by taking a picture and writing a little sort of caption about the picture, and hoping that through that they would communicate something, beyond language difficulties and beyond awkwardness of the day. So it was a good day. And here we're all sitting looking at each other's picture on a big screen, after eating a feast and working in the field. That was working together. I think we were harvesting potatoes, it looks like. So big crowds, and cooking, and cooking the meal. And I think that might be on a I know it is maybe the same day. No, that's different day altogether. And that was in fact a sanctuary day. So we also sort of extended it to, so I haven't told you what I have. Sorry, I'm not doing very well, but the group we're working with is CAE, which is Center for African Entrepreneurship, and they are providing business support, really, so income support. So, but that's kind of like they've got quite a strong corporate image. They do present themselves very well, partly because I suppose they want to show that, you know, those people who come to this country with very little to show, um, you know, because they haven't got necessarily the right to be, you know, yet the right to work or be here. How can they dream to sort of like, you know, fit in and find the steps to sort of, you know, do a business plan and do a dream up an activity, and you know, so it's all that. But obviously there's so much before that that they provide, as you know, they've got a food bank, they provide weekly kind of well-being outings, and I suppose coming to the farm was one of that. But we also had events when other groups came, and we kind of merged them with the twin group from CAE. And in that on that day, it was a sanctuary group who were providing holidays for migrants who were in limbo. And take, you know, and so we hosted some people around our community, hosted them for 4 days, and we offered to sort of welcome them at the fields at the same time as we had the twinning people from CAE. And so some of those people we had met before it happened to be so. And so that was really nice to have that connection through time of people that we followed the journey from, people that had you know, have been around waiting for resolutions for so long, and things aren't moving very fast for them. This is the day when the Somali Kitchen came and Stroud CSA. That was great. And they were coming to actually see the outdoor kitchen, which you can see in the back. And that was a terrible day. That was a wonderful day and a terrible day, because an hour before they arrived, one of the growers actually pulled a string through the mower and the tractor, and the whole outdoor kitchen collapsed. We destroyed it and then Tom said, "I'm rebuilding it. It'll be done in an hour." And he did. He put it back together, so that was okay. But they were a great, great bunch. I mean, the Somali Kitchen, you've got a wonderful, wonderful twin there. I mean, you know, we have learned to work with CAE, but they are so different in a way. You know, there has been real challenges to work with them. That's when, so trying to do some events in town, we did propose to go in and build planters in their offices, so that we could deliver to people, and people could have like homegrown vegetables in there for those of them who could. So we did that. We had a whole day of building together, and that was so much fun. We had music on and danced and did a lot, you know, and it was really practical. We also visited, I haven't got any pictures of that, but we visited urban gardens. So we took them to two different really amazing urban gardens in Swansea, partly to flag up volunteering opportunities that were more accessible to them than just coming to the farm, and that wouldn't necessarily require organizing of a minibus and logistics of like coming as a group and everything. So hopefully some of them, you know, have kept those doors open, and because there's some other organizations that are doing great work. So it was kind of networking people. That was good. This is Tom delivering planters in Penland in Swansea East to some families, very happy families. This is a planter that we were setting up in the roof garden of their offices in town, and so that's our volunteers and their volunteer kind of putting some seedlings in the planters. And so before I get to the last slide, I'm gonna what else? Oh yes, other things which I don't have pictures of. We we've got a harvest party every year, so they've always come to that. It's been a big event. Really good fun. We had social evenings when we ate and they made us dance salsa, which was really lovely. Um, we're planning into the future now to that sort of came from them. They really want to do um, to have more help with accessing the countryside and the what we call Gower, where we are, which is, so we are going to do some heritage walks, discovery walks with them of the area, and maybe some evenings of storytelling, of sharing stories, of their stories, but stories of here and people, trying to find people from here to share their stories. So that would be, we haven't set any dates yet for that, but that's what the plan is for the following year. We've got a film night coming, which is going to be screening one of the Old Oak from Ken, is it Ken Loach? I'm not sure. Um, um, I think Stroud have done that, and they've had discussions following that. So that's in 10 days' time in town. We've got a good uptake for that because it's been really hard for us to engage our two challenges we've had. One, in terms of inclusion, one is consistency of people, having people that there's a thread of relationship that is being sort of visible and woven. It felt like really drop here and there, even though it's valuable. It just sometimes feel like, oh, it'd be nice to have a thread. And there's a few individuals that have actually really kept connection, and that's really rewarding. And so that's why this slide here, I wanted to show you. That's yesterday. That's the all of the CSAs of oh dear, my computer might die. I'm going to run and get my charger. Um, the oh my God, just hang on and maybe if you want to give me 1 second.
Okay, sure.
How we
I'm wondering, Matt, whether we would you mind if we stopped for a short break after Pascal has spoken, and then we'll come to you after the break.
Yeah, so I'm good. I managed to find the charger. Good. So yes, the break would be great. I'm nearly finished. So yesterday we had a gathering of the different very small land-based initiatives on Gower, small CSAs that have kind of spawned out of Cae Tan the last 10 years. And we came together to sort of like share, our successes and our difficulties and try to sort of, together, feel as a community and how we can support each other into the future. And around the table, you can see two of the twinning people who are still volunteers with. So across the table there, in the right-hand corner, there's Ads, whom you've seen a picture of from Iran. He is, and he's now volunteering in Cae Tan, which is another CSA near Morriston Hospital, because it's much closer to him than us. And then here in the forefront between myself and Tom, you see the back of Jose, who is somebody from Honduras, who's again also was working, but he for Cae Tan, same CSA, and he came to us as well to work with us through twinning initially. And so he's a coffee grower from Honduras who, but he had a work permit for a while. Now he's he hasn't been renewed, so he's volunteering. But those two people were sitting with us. So in terms of inclusion, it was so real. The fact that actually, it's us as growers and volunteers um, and at the table with us are those really important volunteers whose voices, I hope they feel they are, really part of an important part of our work. So that feels really good. And then the last, I think that's all. Um, so thank you for twinning money, and thank you for that experience. I mean, it feels a start. It feels like a drop in the ocean, but equally, that's what we've got to start. If it can be seen like the effort of the Real Farming Trust actually really organizing those webinars and just promoting what we've done, and that can inspire other people to do to reach out and try to establish connections. It feels like it's an important thing and very valuable. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Pascal. Yeah, so let's take a 5-minute break now. And well, come back at 11 minutes past. um, yeah, and just take a minute. We'll see you in 5. Zoom. There we go.
Thanks, Telly. I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Can everyone see that okay?
It's just loading, I think. There we go, yeah.
Yeah, that should be okay. Yeah, so I'm Matt Williams, and I actually do a variety of things, not all of them connected to Jubilee Farm. I would love to do more work with Jubilee Farm, and especially the education side. That's my real interest. And coordinating a twinning project is actually giving me a chance, as much as it's given participants a chance to engage. I think also for me, it's given me a chance to do work that I never would have been able to do otherwise. So I'm really grateful for it, just from my own point of view as well. So I've been coordinating the project since the middle of 2024, which is sort of the second year of it happening. And this is our little patch in County Antrim. You're looking out over Island Magee, which is not actually an island; it's a peninsula. And this was the first view that we saw back in 2018, when a few of us who had started the Community Benefit Society were considering actually putting a share offer together to buy our own land. And we did. It was the first one in Northern Ireland. It's actually a community-owned farm. We were really inspired by the guys at Fordhall Farm that most of you will have heard of. Charlotte Hollins was very helpful in showing us how to go about putting a share offer together. And so it's not been easy, I have to say, and I definitely don't want to paint too rosy a picture of how easy it's been to run a community farm, CSA. But it's such a beautiful place, and so much benefit from being involved that it encourages all of us to keep pushing through despite what often feel like insurmountable difficulties, actually. So the 3 main things we do are the community supported agriculture itself, but often that can end up taking a back seat to the care farming or social farming that goes on. And then the third thing being conservation and conservation education work, especially it's the education side that I've tried to major on. So that's a volunteer day that you're looking at going on there. We are twinned with the Now Group, who are an organization in Belfast who basically do training programs to get anyone from the ages of 16 plus into work. Usually the people involved who are neurodiverse, autistic, have ADHD or learning difficulty. And they're a big organization, so they're completely different scale from us, with 13.5 acres, only sort of less than one FTE employed staff at the moment in Jubilee Farm. Very small budget, and Now Group are a big organization with offices all across the island of Ireland, actually. It's a completely different scale, urban context, working with a thousands of people from ages 16 plus to help them get into employment. And so the the things that we've tried to do, kind of similarly, really, to what Jade's been saying, was that starting off by having events. Oh, it's snowing here. Just seen outside the window. I wish I could show you that what's outside my window right now. It started off sunny and it's snowing. That's kind of typical of County Antrim. But yeah, we started off trying to do all these events, really, which could sometimes lead to quite a lot of anxiety in terms of, oh, who are going to get along. There were a lot of cancels, a lot of no-shows. It could be very frustrating. I just realized I'm wearing the same top as I am in that picture. Anyway, uh, and even though some of the events were good, we engaged with people. What we found over time was that actually trying to put these big sort of additional things on wasn't really where the benefit was at. What's been most helpful is doing roughly what we were doing anyway, but inviting people from the Now Group to participate. It's slightly different on the other side. So when we do events down at the Now Group in Belfast, just because of the nature of their work, they don't really have open sessions as such. So we have to sort of go to specifically organized things. So we can participate, we can join in with other people at the Now Group, but we can't do exactly what we can do at Jubilee Farm, which is basically have a volunteer day that then we expand to include people from Now Group. And that's been really good. So that kind of longer term, more steady, smaller engagement is I think been where the benefit of the Twinning project had been. And that's a really inclusive thing, because our volunteer sessions are incredibly diverse. For being a relatively small number of people, we have a mix of ages, genders. We've got people from different parts of the world, including former asylum seekers, sub-Saharan Africa, in the past, from the Middle East, as well. And one of the things that makes it inclusive is actually we don't know an awful lot about the backgrounds of a number of people. We don't tend to ask more than people are happy to share. Sometimes that's for very specific reasons, to do with what people have experienced or what they're trying to get away from. We don't even know everyone's real name, actually. There's at least one person who uses different names in different contexts, just out of fear of persecution. And so because we have that sort of very, very inclusive culture, and the focus is on doing the work together and essentially getting stuck in together, it means that there's a much more natural sort of welcome to the guys from the Now Group, because that's no more of a step really in terms of diversity in the group than the kind of diversity we already have. So that this question of diagnoses and neurodiversity, it really didn't come up. Like, we knew that the Now Group worked with people who are neurodivergent, but we didn't know anyone's diagnoses. We didn't ask. And so the first, like I say, 12 or 18 months of engaging with people, we had no idea what was sort of written on that piece of paper that they would have had as part of their connection to the Now Group. And that's really helped, because that's not then the basis that we got to know people on. It's just who they were and how they interacted. So that's been really excellent, to have had that experience of just getting to know people. You see a few of the people involved in these pictures now, and there's a kind of funny connection with Pascal and Cae Tan in several ways. One is that the guy that you can see, I can't point with my finger, but he's in the bottom right picture with a smiley face in front. Yeah, that's Tim. He's actually from the Gower. I think he's had some connection with Cae Tan in the past. I know that I got an email from Tom O'Kane saying his family roots are from Antrim, and probably the main person that we've had along from the Now group has been a guy called Cae. So I don't know why all these connections are there, but I've just noticed that they're kind of interesting. But I want to tell you something about Cae. I won't point him out in the pictures, just sort of protect his anonymity as such. But Cae was one of the people at the Now group who was going through the programs, very slow to speak, and wouldn't really look people in the eye. Wasn't really flourishing in quite a lot of the stuff they were putting on. And when he started coming along to Jubilee Farm, it really brought him out of himself. It was something that he was passionate at and very good at. And I have to say this is an aspect of the inclusivity as well, because yeah, I'm not from a farming background myself. I'm just learning. I'm more of an academic sort of background. And in some circles, it's like I'm the one who kind of knows what I'm talking about. And I sort of, have a certain type of status. But the reality is that I'm far worse at most stuff that we do at the farm than Cae is. And that's been a really great sort of thing about humility and inclusion, that there's really no sense of superiority at all when we get down to doing the stuff together at the farm. It doesn't really matter what sort of titles you have or what your qualifications might have been. If you can catch a sheep, then um, that's what basically qualifies you to be involved. And I'm not saying you're disqualified if you can't catch a sheep, because that'd be unfair. Sometimes they're fast, but it, there's this beautiful sense in which when we get involved in doing something together, then it's the task and doing the task together that matters. It's not how people might identify themselves outside of that context. I think too that the regularity with which people come just establishes the relationships, and then communication and conversation comes from that comfort that people have, not just with the people, but with the place. Place is super important, I think, to everyone, but it's something that's talked about in relation to people who are neurodivergent, because a change of place can be quite unsettling. But getting used to a place, conversely, can be really settling, and physically being connected to the land and the ground and the animals and the plants and the people all at once is actually a way of being deeply grounded and invested as well, because you can see over time how things grow, how things change, and when lambs are born. So yeah, I guess three little, I don't know, I always doing teaching, so I always think in terms of like threes and alliteration and stuff. But I think the three things I want to highlight as being real benefits, and especially in relation to inclusion, would be interconnection. I think that the relationships between people that have been established, as I say, without being based on sort of your typical identity markers, that's been a real benefit, the interconnection piece that people have experienced. I think the investment as well, that over time there's been both an investment from the people who are participating in the project, itself, but also from us into people. And that's what's led us now to think in terms of this final year of the Twinning Project, actually developing a course, like a more formalized course to pilot something around small scale farming and agroecology, that the more regular people will hopefully come along to and do a number of sessions. And we're not going to be able to accredit it this year, but it could lead to an accredited course, and it will certainly be a real benefit for people to formalize a little bit of the volunteering that they've done regularly. And so there's a real investment going on, which will be longer term in people's lives. And the third thing is this integration piece. I think so much of life is so fragmented. And it's not just urban life, but urban life can exacerbate it, I guess, this fragmentation between people and nature, and often sort of indoor screen-based lifestyles, which I think, just, I know for myself, spending too much time indoors on a computer is a kind of disintegrating experience. But then you get this integration happening where people are connected to the land, to plants, to animals, to each other. and ultimately to something spiritual as well. I think that's a big part of the integration. Jubilee Farm are a Christian organization that have always worked with people of all faiths and none. And this spiritual aspect just comes up in little subtle ways in how people experience being there. Um, and so it's kind of ironic. I know that depending on how you see Christianity or what your experience of it has been, it can seem like or look like a way of being exclusive. But partly because our understanding of Christianity being the reconciliation of all things in Christ, which is it's kind of like cosmic, all-encompassing invitation, but also just because of what we've experienced. I think that being straightforward about who we are, but being inclusive of anyone who comes along to get involved, has actually added to inclusion. It's given people a chance to think about stuff and see things in a different way that they may not normally do. And not everyone engages with that side of things. We don't tend to put it down people's throats. It's only if people raise questions that we talk about it. But yeah, those are the three things that I'd say we've been really beneficial about inclusion with twinning. And kind of, I would like to hear the answer to Jenny's question, like how can we carry on some of this work? What potential avenues there are for funding, because it's not straightforward, truth be told. If it wasn't for this twinning project, most of these things wouldn't have happened at all. Certainly the connection within our group and the guys there who benefited so much. So I'd like to hear the answer to that question. And thanks for listening.
Thanks very much, Matt. Yeah, so I think it'd be good to, sort of have a bit of a discussion now around how this continues into the future, as Jenny raised and as Matt raised. And also around how twinning differs from other inclusion activity. And also if any of you attending would like to talk about anything that you do on your farms or anything that you'd like to do, then that would be really interesting to hear about. But let's start with that question of the continuation, and when this project ends and things. Maybe Jade can answer that.
Yeah, I don't have a magic answer. It's always an issue. I suppose we set it up knowing that it could be a standalone piece of work. That if there isn't any other funding, good stuff would happen at least in those 4 years. I think it does need grant funding. It's too much to our CSAs who can barely keep their heads above water, already just growing vegetables, to do the inclusion stuff they'd like to do without money from somewhere. You can't subsidize the inclusion work from selling vegetables. It doesn't work. I think, the benefits are so fantastic and so good, and to some extent evident. We can share the findings from the evaluation that there is at least a bit of ammunition for groups who want to do it. In the last year, RFT will have some capacity to help the small groups make their own funding applications. It's not going to be easy. If there's any talk going on where you are about the Climate Action Fund, it's a big lottery fund, similarly structured to the one that RFT applied to get this money. Then RFT have got a little sort of standalone offer to anyone making a bid to that fund to add twinning to the work, so that people aren't just getting given a bag of food, which doesn't do anything at all for all the reasons you've just heard. No, that's not true. A bag of food on its own is useful to someone in a marginalised situation, but that's the kinds of social context can be added to the work that people are putting forward in the Climate Action Fund. So we will do that. But no, Jenny, we don't have any magic answers, and we wish we did. It's the usual story. I think, Matteo, you've got your hand up, haven't you?
I'll just say that as part of one of the projects for this year, Twinning kindly agreed to fund some of my time in applying for a grant, which would help to satisfy some of the twinning objectives long term. Even though they couldn't, it was for a kitchen actually, similar to what you've created Pascal, but given that we were applying for the money in the last year of the project, it was deemed that it wouldn't, be able to serve, it wouldn't be value for money based on the number of events we'd be hosting in the year. But we have put an application through now for National Lottery funding to build it. And, sustainably, my time was covered by the Twinning project for that. So I don't know, there are ways, I suppose, in this year that maybe Twinning coordinators can, on paid time, try and lay some groundwork for the future, I guess.
And I know there are plots that come up every now and then, and I do know a farm near me which got the Farming and Protected Landscapes funding for a sort of community inclusion coordinator, and I know that funding is mostly over now, but yeah, I think it's probably a case of keeping an eye out for those things that come up in either locally or nationally.
It's a lot of work to make the bids on top of growing the vegetables and trying to keep your head above water. So I think it's really hard. I will talk to Susie, CSA network, about whether we can put in national bids similarly structured to get money down again. But yeah, it's always a jungle. We'll do our best.
Yeah, are there any other questions based on what you've heard so far?
I've got a question, which is to hear what the people we haven't heard from yet, what you're interested in, and what you want to do while you're here, and what you're stuck with.
Hi, it's Mandy from Exmoor. We've been going back and forth with thinking about how we can get our veg boxes out to a wider range of people. And I work for FWAG Southwest as well, Farming and Wildlife Advisory Group Southwest, and my boss, my CEO, he's also got a CSA, and he was toying with the idea of kind of offering veg boxes for whatever people are willing to pay for them, so that some people will obviously pay more, but then we can ensure that we can get veg boxes, healthy food, out to those who perhaps can't afford the subscription that we've kind of got for the bulk of our boxes. And we obviously give food to the food kitchen as well in Minehead from Horner Farm. But I don't know if anyone else has got any experience of how you can ensure that those families who can't afford a share can get access to the veg boxes, as well as those that can. Yeah, I wondered if anyone's got an answer to
that. Hi, Mandy, it's Jenny.
Hi. Hello.
So I also am quite involved, volunteer with a veg box CSA near where I live, Kirkstall Valley Farm, which Pascal probably knows Rianne, I imagine.
Yeah,
she did her training with you.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. So Rianne runs it. Well, she's one of the growers there.
Yeah.
Anyway, so what they do there in terms of, there is a sort of like pricing structure for the veg boxes, and so there are a limited number of boxes which are offered, virtually sort of half price.
Yeah.
On the basis that some of the boxes are, I can't remember how they put it really, as an element of inviting people to pay it forward.
Yeah.
So people, there is a price, but if you can pay a bit more, that's going to enable CSA to provide more of these very low cost boxes.
Yeah.
And certain I think that does work. And it comes down to accessibility as well, because they don't do deliveries other than through to about two collection points. So actually, even at a cheap box, it's not necessarily, it goes up and down as to how much that offer is taken up. Coming to the farm itself can be a bit of but yeah.
Yeah, so we've got
Probably.
various collection points, which I think would suit. And then I guess it's the kind of the well-being and getting people onto the farm and all of that sort of thing, which isn't easy because obviously not easy to get to always. But the cooking side of things and knowing what to do with the veg is another aspect, isn't it?
Yeah. They also, for Kirkstall, I think we got like through the local authority, like a small pot of money, I don't know, a couple of £100 or something like that. And they did some sort of harvest cook eat sessions, which is sort of targeted, more for like, linking up with an asylum seekers group. And they have gone well, which is also what we're kind of saying you guys have been talking about, but those are like one-offs really. And my feeling is, observation, it's sort of very time served. So they've been trying really hard to make contacts with different groups. And sometimes you get that inconsistency of people, they turn up, they appear to have a good time, and you never see them again. But occasionally people do sort of come back just to volunteer in their own right. And I think I don't know, it's really finding those contacts within the community who are willing to spread the word and encourage and make it feel like a safe place and welcoming place.
I was thinking it was very interesting right at the start. I can't remember who said it now, about we need to understand how to go to the people we're trying to engage rather than expecting them to our ways of working. And I guess it's trying to tap into the various different groups that we want to engage to find out what would be appealing for them and what would make them comfortable.
I think that's a good point, Mandy, that it's actually very difficult to engage with the kind of groups, that Somali Kitchen or the Food Bank or the Cae or the Now group work with, and they're good at it, and they understand people's eating situations and their living situations and their cooking situations. So partnering an organization like that who's good at doing that stuff, and you're using your skills of running the farm, which they don't have at all, that seems quite helpful because then they've got the social context.
Brilliant, thank you.
I was going to ask.
So some of them have been partnering like community kitchens, which I think is a good idea because the community kitchens can do that social stuff really well. They do the cooking really well. And also they actually like courgettes in August. The stuff you've got too much of or is muddy or you can't put in your boxes can sometimes find a home through a community kitchen. I put in the chat also, really it's a sort of way of communicating the ask. We've called it Lush. It's a little gadget that some CSAs have used quite nicely where they ask existing customers to buy another one for someone that needs it. And then they partner a different organisation to distribute their food because they're already running a food bank or something like that, or, cooking class or something. So there's a nice little, like very short video in there about how to communicate that ask to your existing customers, because then you can sell 2 boxes at a retail price to one customer. That's good for you.
Brilliant.
So have a look at that page there. There's a little how-to and a toolkit. It's not rocket science really, but it's a good little gadget.
Thank you.
I was going to ask how did you find and sort of choose and link up with those organizations initially, Cae and Somali Kitchen, and now how did you first make contact with them, I suppose, or did they come to you? Did you go to them?
Yeah, we went to them. It was a bit random. We tended to know the farming partners already. Had all of them? yeah, I think the RFT had contact with all of the farming partners already, but not many of the city partners. And you know what it's like making these bids. It's an epic amount of work. Did it all on Sunday afternoons, I didn't want to spend too much time. So it was a bit random, really. And what I was looking for was organisations we didn't know at all. So yeah, a bit of a gamble, really. Organisations, there had to be something in it for them, not necessarily the same as our objectives, but they had to have some motivation to do it that fitted with their aspirations. So like the food bank realised that people were coming again and again. It used to be that people came to the food bank because their benefits hadn't come through and they needed a bag of food this week. But what had happened was that people were coming every week because they can never afford food anymore. The demographic of people coming had changed. And they realised they didn't have what people needed, that their whole lives were in free fall, and the volunteers were traumatised by not being able to meet the need in front of them. So the food bank wanted to offer some kind of social activity for the people that were coming to them. So, that there had to be something in it for each of them. We didn't really mind what it was, but something that mattered to those organisations. They had to have enough capacity to do it. So we were looking for organisations that had at least a part-time member of staff and some capacity to do the admin and management. They had to meet the lottery criteria for who could get funding, as they all needed help with that to write the right some kind of safeguarding policy and all the rest of it. So they all kind of took a little bit of a step up in their, in their structure to do it. They had to be, of course, not too far away from someone else who wanted to do it. So some kind of practical connection. And we, particularly in the urban groups, tried to have a bit of a mixture because we wanted, from our FT's point of view, we wanted to learn something about how to do inclusion well in agroecology. So we wanted to work with a mixture. But it was actually quite random especially the urban partners were. And we just cold called them. I was just Googling, there were organisations we deliberately didn't know.
Can I ask, sorry, I can't find my hand gesture on the screen, but can I ask, we had also the Truro Food Bank and the Soul Farm. Are they still in twinning or not?
Yeah, so we're missing the fourth pair here on this webinar. And Truro Food Bank have decided not to carry on with twinning. They're pleased with what they have done in the 3 years, and they had a 3-year agreement. So yeah, we didn't explain that. The reason why we're going on for an extra year, which is probably going to be the best year, and we're pleased we are, is because we had an underspend from the first 3 years. So each of the pairs agreed to do a 3-year project, so the Truro have completed that. But they don't want to carry on, I think mainly because of internal issues at the food bank and staffing issues and things like that, that they like twinning, but they haven't really got the oomph to carry on. So the CSA there is keen to carry on Soul Farm, so we'll just find another partner for them to use that last bit of funding just for 1 year, which is not ideal, but yeah, that's the best we can do, that one.
And I had a question for the CSAs. How much work was it for the coordinator, as the coordinators yourselves, what, to give people an idea of what's involved, really, how much of a commitment it is?
Yeah, I could say I think there's a real complexity to it, which meant that it's a bit of administrative work because you're working with two different organizations that have different ways of working, and it can just take a little while to even understand the structures of another organization, and even simple stuff like how do they format their spreadsheets, which it takes me a very long time to work out that sort of thing. And because you're having to agree on your budget and activities together as twins, and then go to Real Farming Trust and agree and negotiate again, there's this 3-way thing that goes on. So I couldn't put hours to it as such. I could go back and look how many hours it's taken. But I would definitely say that, especially at the start, it is quite admin heavy just to coordinate all that. I mean, the time is covered, as Jade said, which is huge, because if it wasn't, that'd be a real challenge. because I'm freelance, I can just kind of let this project expand as long as it needs to take. So I'm in a different position than some other people would be. But yeah, I'd definitely say it's the admin rather than the actual sort of work itself, which is complex and can take quite a bit of time to get your head around.
Yeah, and I think that's been important actually. We didn't set it out very clear in our original objectives. We were thinking about the community members getting to know each other. But what's been really significant is the organisations and the staff getting to understand how the other organisation works. And there's been a real benefit in that, I think. And entirely if you or the CSA network need it, of course, people have claimed for the time they actually spent. So we can, there is an actual figure of how much time people have used to, the coordinators have needed to do the work. So that
I
data is there if you want it.
I would agree with Matt as well, in as much as organ, really work communicating well with the other organization has been a real challenge, and especially because they work very differently. So whatever you might organize with one person, they also need to take back to their sort of hierarchy, and then it comes back at the next meeting and is completely different then. So it's a very slow process. And we have spent a lot of time trying to formulate and articulate things that haven't been coming to fruition. So we did a lot, but we also thought about a lot and organized a lot together that we didn't follow through. And um, and sometimes it just felt really disheartening, that sort of like we're talking different languages and with different agendas, trying to achieve different things, um, and not managing to um, so so in terms of time, it kind of bleeds into everything else. So it's really difficult to quantify it well. And but when you've had, and then it's like you achieve, you know you sort of have a sense of over time. I think you're right, Jade, in saying that almost if it needs longer, it needs a lot longer almost. It's almost like now we kind of could you know carry on and work better than 3 years ago. It took us 3 years. Do you see what I mean? 3 years to kind of like work it out. There we are.
I'll echo that from Pascal, and that it seems like the kind of base level of communication, it's not the time, it's almost hard to monitor because it's, 5 minutes here replying to a message and 5 minutes there, and it's needing to be on hand to respond, especially when events are coming up. Then I think, it's very little and often, but hard to monitor the time. I tried to keep a timesheet, but I just stopped at one point because it's like, okay, you can sit down for certain tasks and know you spent an hour on them, but also, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there, it's hard to keep track of.
And then from our point of view, we've got responsibility for administering this fund and making sure it's spent for best value of money in terms of delivering those objectives. And it's quite difficult. On the one hand, we've got it's our task to make sure the money's well spent. And on the other hand, it's necessary to do lots of these conversations, to plan things that don't come off the ground. It's quite open-ended. And then, which stakeholder do you answer to? Do you ask the participants whether that was money well spent? Do you ask the funder, the lottery? Do you ask the staff? So working is quite complex, working in a project like this. And I think it's very valuable. I think it's very important work to do. And I think it's easy to underestimate the benefit of all that time you spent trying to work with a very different organization. I think in some ways that's really where it's at.
I'll also add that, you don't, what is it, a 4-year project?
It is now, yeah. It
Yeah.
got extended.
Just because the funding ends at the end of this year doesn't mean that the 4-year relationship is suddenly destroyed. You know, that relationship's still there. And even if there's not money, easy money to hand to help that relationship, those two groups meet, that's not to say that relationship isn't still there. And, you know, who knows what will happen after the funding is stopped. But I can imagine, you know, on an ad hoc basis, maybe I'll call up Smiley Kitchen or they'll get a call from us and they'll be like, actually, we have found, you know, a little bit of money. Can we come over? And that wouldn't have happened. You know, you wouldn't get that phone call if we hadn't had those 4 years first when it was fully funded.
Yeah, that's right. And I think some of the changes that have happened for individuals or organisations will be enduring. Some won't, and it's very hard to quantify. It'd be easy to overclaim on that. I don't really know. But when I talked to the Somali Kitchen, when the first time I met them, we went for a walk and they were really afraid to be outside, some people. They were really nervous to be in before dusk in case there were wild animals that would hurt them or something like that. They were really out of their depth. And now they're talking about learning to drive and buying their own minibus because they really love going to the countryside and they want to go all the time and a minibus is always full. So, it might be that there's no funding for them to carry on coming out to Stroud Community Agriculture, but some of those changes that have happened, I think, will be enduring anyway. Some won't, but I think some will.
Yeah, also I think so for us, within the Swansea kind of like landscape of the voluntary sector, the fact that we now understand who Cae is, we go to town, we see them. And so when things are relevant that come up, and we're able to think about them and to think, oh, we need to tell them about this because actually they'd really, there was actually, they have a project where they do, I don't exactly know what they do, but they kind of grow something in somewhere else as part of a sort of a side business of the organization, medicinal sort of, and we were contacted by some social police people who were saying we've got thousands of grow bags from a busted sort of cannabis farm. You need to go and pick them up and do something with them. And we didn't, I think, but Tom rang Cae and said, go and get some grow bags. And Frank said, okay, great, thank you. We're going to get, so that it's not to grow cannabis. I'm not, but to make it, to recycle them. Those are resources that are just, need to be recycled in the community world. But what I'm saying is that there's an awareness and there's a networking and there's a support that will remain. Does that make sense? You're not looking impressed, Jade.
You're muted.
I was being good and filling in the survey, Pascal, at the same time as listening to you.
Oh, I see.
No, I agree totally with what you said. I think a lot of very hard, as I'm supposed to be evaluating this thing and all this qualitative benefit is really hard to capture and really hard to value, but I think it really is enormous. I think that those kind of spin-offs and sidelines that we don't even necessarily hear are extremely rich. I think they're really good.
Yeah, I'm aware we've got 5 minutes left. Is there anything that Yeva or Mandy or Jenny you want to ask or to share with us about your experiences or what you'd like?
Yeah. Sorry, I also can't find the hand, but anyway, yeah, I'd just like to ask a question, really, maybe for Jade, I guess. So, when you're sort of going into this last year, I'm just wondering whether you'd be able to produce something which other people can like something to write up, not a kind of too indigent, something very accessible for other people to be able to look back and see what's happened and get inspiration from. It'd
Yes,
be nice
Jenny, we've
to come
just
out of
appointed.
this.
Yeah, quite rubbish at comms. So we've got all the stories and very rich information. But we've just RFT has just appointed a comms person deliberately to try and bring this all together and communicate it in a way that's useful. In the meantime, if you want to, if you're trying to make a funding bid or something or other, you could just email me and I'll send you, we've written up reports, we've done evaluation
Okay.
reports and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
there's stuff you could use as evidence if you were making a bid. But our website's hopeless. I'm just hopeless at it, and I haven't had time to do it. So it'll improve when we get this comms person who, take the stories, the kinds of stories we've heard today, and make them into something that's easier to see. Anyway, email me if if you want the stuff we have,
Okay.
reports and stuff, then you're welcome.
All right. Is that what you meant? Because you mentioned something about if people are using the Climate Action Fund bids to contact you.
Yeah, well, yes, in
include
addition to
twinning
that,
into it.
yeah. So I've written, if you've got groups in your area or, in your networks, whatever you're doing, who are doing a climate action fund bid, I've written a little sort of two-pager about adding twinning as a component of that and why
Right.
you would do that and what evidence there is and what twinning is and
Yeah.
how it fits with that fund. So if
Yeah.
you've got a climate action fund group and you'd like to add twinning, then you can let me know and I'll send you that and talk
Okay.
to them.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah.
Great. Is it all right, Jade, if I share your email in the email we send out
Yeah, definitely.
this with
Yeah,
the recording and
that's really
everything?
good. Yeah, I think I want to say something about the webinar that there's not many people who have come to it, so it's done a different job to the one I thought it would do. But actually, I think it's really been fantastic, and I'm really happy for the CSAs to have talked in the way they did do, which actually we haven't done very much of. And I think the value of the webinar, so yeah, thanks for Tali to getting it together and managing it so well. We'll be taking, excerpts of what you've said and the little videos if you're happy for them to be used again to do exactly what Jenny was just talking about, that it'll help us to communicate what it's been like on the ground and why it matters. So I think the recording, if you're happy to share it, will be used quite widely actually for people thinking about what to do next. So yeah, the recording's like gold for us. Thank you very much. Really useful. I think it'll be used a lot.
Yeah, and it's really important that we capture, everything that you guys have learnt during this whole process, so that can be carried forward because it's so dependent on funding as well. Then these things can, sort of lose momentum when the funding runs out, and you've got to sort of share this information while it's fresh, and then hopefully that keeps an energy going around it. So yeah, really glad to have you all here. Thank you all so much for coming. And just to point out, I've put a link to the feedback form in the chat, and I will also send it out afterwards. It'd be really helpful if you could fill that in. And yeah, thank you. This is the last in our series of webinars. I know I've seen some of you on previous ones, so I'm really pleased that you are here. But yeah, I'm sure we'll be doing another one of these series of webinars again in the future. So yeah, thank you so much to all our speakers. That was fascinating. And thank you to Jade for organising this. And thank you to everyone who came. And just get in touch if you have any questions. I'll send out an email after this though, so probably later this afternoon. I will stop recording.
Thank you, Tali.